So hello everyone, welcome back to Oliveboard's Agri Coaching, and today we are starting our second part of general agriculture. In last part, what did we learn all about? We learned about different data, statistics which are related to production, resources, and more importantly which are also related to macroeconomic indicators which are associated with agriculture. Then we came towards the cultivation practices which are done in agriculture. Subsistence agriculture, we saw then shifting cultivation, and then we stopped our session, and today we will continue from the same shifting cultivation. So we saw shifting cultivation, and now terrace farming we are going to start. Okay, so this is the second part of your general agriculture. First part in English has been done, first part in Hindi also has been done. Okay, for all the people, this now is going to be a second part in English for all the students who definitely need these particular sessions only in English. So it refers whatever this terrace farming is there. Let's start this particular session with the terrace farming, and then we will continue with much more interesting topics which are associated with the general agriculture in the country. When I talk about terrace farming, always remember, now as you all know, India is a land with such a diversity. When we consider diversity, let's consider geographical diversity. So we all know in India plains are there. Plains means what? Flatlands. We all know plateaus are there. Plateaus means what? Flatlands or maybe floors which are at a particular elevation. Elevation in the sense what? A particular height. And then comes mountains. Now for any specific area, it may be plateau, it may be mountain, it may be valley. Of course you have to do agriculture there for your survival. So at hilly regions, have you ever imagined that how would agriculture takes place? So just imagine this. Suppose this is a mountain, and suppose I want to do agriculture on this. So when I think about it, would it be logical to just plant the crops on the slopes of the mountain? And if I do so, if I plant the crops on the slope of the mountain, whatever rainfall is there, this rainfall may destroy the overall crop production, or overall whatever standing crop is there, it may get destroyed. At the same time, through such slopes, it is high probability that soil erosion also take place because of our agricultural activity also, as well as because of the natural rainfall or natural precipitation also. Considering all these factors, terrace farming becomes very, very important agriculture practice which is done in mountains or maybe areas with high elevation or topography. So wherever high elevated topography is there, you always have to remember that these particular mountains are there. These are having extended raised platforms. These extended raised platforms are nothing but these are extended ridges which are raised on the mountain slopes. So if you look at this particular mountains, this is a very beautiful image to show you that how different mountains are there, and look at this extended. So this particular floor is extended. Below to that, this particular floor is extended. This particular floor is extended. This particular floor is extended. This particular floor is extended, and this particular floor is also extended. So overall, when I talk about this particular mountain which had perfect slope, or maybe this particular mountain which has perfect slope, here what you do is that you raise the platforms. Now this particular raising of the platform either could be by construction of maybe by simple normal boulders, by construction of even cement, or even by construction of mud. It's just raising a platform, raising the height, right? So for example, you see a slope. Imagine this is the slope. You can climb this slope, you can even get down of the slope, okay? But it will become very, very tedious and difficult to climb such a vertical or maybe such an inclined slope. So what do we do in such situation? What we do? We make steps out of it. We make steps out of it. So you all would have gone into heighted buildings, okay? So before lifts were there, right? Now lifts are there, elevators are there. You can go from one elevation to other, one floor to second, second to third. But now the problem is that earlier if you see, no elevators were there, no any lifts were there. So that is why here you could see this particular slope when we are talking about. Now here when you keep these particular steps which are given, so from this particular steps you can get down easily and you can walk upside easily. Similarly, such steps like situation is created on the slopes of the mountain, on these particular floors of these steps. So these footings, here on the footings the cropping is done. So it refers to the farming method where farmer creates steps along the slopes of a hill or mountainous region for crop cultivation. That's it. We already discussed all of these things to understand. Farming is mainly practiced in hilly and mountainous region. Part of terrace is a plain slope cut into series of flat surfaces for effective farming. So this slope is there. If I want to create step-like structure, of course, the part of the slope has to be cut down. Am I right, guys? So this is the thing. These platforms or flat top surfaces on which the cropping is done, that is called as terrace. And that is why farming on such flat top surface would be called as terrace farming. Now I think you are getting an idea. Then it is practiced in different if you consider India's map, we have four important topographies. Okay, first is northeast hilly regions, which is extended part of Himalayas. So overall western Himalaya, eastern Himalaya, two hilly regions. And when you come to peninsular India, western Ghats and eastern Ghats, these perforations, these are again your elevated areas. So on these four regions you can see that such type of terrace farming is done. Okay, so states if I talk about, you can go to Uttarakhand, okay, you can go to Himachal Pradesh, you can go to even northeast states like Meghalaya, Assam, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh. Apart from that, western Ghats, if you come to the Konkan region of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Malnad region, Kerala region, also you can go to Andhra Pradesh in the eastern Ghats, Odisha in eastern Ghats, as well as Tamil Nadu in eastern Ghats. When you go here regions, you will definitely find such terrace farming. I hope that I am clear. Now different types of terrace farmings are there. This is just a broader classification just to understand. So the first broader classification, whatever terrace farming is done, it is based on the overall alignment. So based on alignment, then based on cross section, and then based on outlet. So let's first understand based on alignment means what. So based on alignment, two types of your terrace farming is there. One is parallel terrace farming and second is non-parallel terrace farming. So parallel terrace farming is nothing but whatever the slopes are there, whatever your terraces are there, those would be parallel to each other. I hope you are getting it. Non-parallel in the sense they are not that normal. It all depends on your hilly region also. For example, if peaks are there with higher perforations on their edges, so therefore, of course, it would be very unlikely to have an parallel terrace farming on such mountains. So therefore, you should have non-parallel terrace farming. Then comes types of terrace farming and based on cross section. Now based on cross section, when I am talking about broader base, bench terrace, and conservation bench, narrow base, steep back slope, and ridgeless. So let us go one by one. One is broader base, which is again divided into graded terraces and level terraces. Graded in the sense what? Whatever your mountain slope is there and whatever are raised platforms, terraces were there, those would be graded. Those would be graded in the sense why this is done? Of course, to prevent your soil erosion which occurs because of the water running through the slopes. Okay. So these graded terraces are similar to contour formations. So when contour formations are done on your terraces, these are graded terraces. Okay. Then are level terraces. Level terraces are nothing but rather than having perforations of the ground, rather than having that whatever terrace is there, that would be plain and it would be a leveled floor. Okay, it would be a leveled floor. I hope you are getting it. Then next is according to cross section, broad base we have done it. Now we are going to bench terrace. So bench terrace is nothing but, you know now what is bench? It's like a chair and you can sit on it, right? So similarly, bench terrace is nothing but whatever floor is there, that is also in the shape of a bench. First is leveled and tabletop. So this is a good example of tabletop. So here whatever your mountains are there in bench like terraces, tabletop in the sense whatever top is there, it will having a flat floor, and that would be then leveled accordingly to the multiple floors which are along the slope, that is our terraces. Outward sloping. Suppose this is my mountain. So outward sloping is nothing but any terrace which has slope in the outward direction. So slope is in the outward direction. Slope is in the outward direction. Now what happens when slope is in the outward direction? Here when slope is in the outward direction, whatever the rain will fall, it will easily get down without destroying or without actually eroding the soil of the mountain slope. I hope you are getting an idea. Opposite to that, inward sloping is there. Now here our slope was outward sloping. In inward sloping what happens? This slope becomes inwardly sloped, that is inside. Now why such inward sloping would be done? Can anybody tell me? Mention in the comment section. So inward sloping is done so that whatever water or rainfall is there which is flowing along the slope, that water could be collected or harvested on the slopes. So whenever on slopes the inward sloping terraces are formed, of course those would be for cultivation of water intensive or water thirsty crops like rice as well as other water intensive crops. Okay, then comes Puerto Rican. These are nothing but of course cirque shaped terraces. Okay, then again by cross section one more type is there, that is conservation bench. Now this conservation bench is nothing but for conservation of your soil erosion. Narrow base is nothing but whatever overall this particular floor is there of your terrace is there, that is having narrow base. Steep back slope, okay, so steep back slope it would be having, and ridgeless. And then by outlet is nothing but terrace which is blocked, vegetated and underground. So this is the overall classification which we are going to see in future also, but just to get an idea I also showed you what are the different classifications. Now let us move towards the advantages of terrace farming. First is prevention of soil erosion, optimal space utilization, environmental sustainability and preventing water runoffs. Now when you consider all these things, it has been found that soil loss is proportional to the square root of length of slope. So here try to understand what we are trying to get. Advantages of terrace farming we all would be knowing of. Soil erosion reduces, optimal space utilization. When you consider the slope of your mountain and when you are constructing terraces like this, of course your overall surface area increases. As surface area increases, the total area under cultivation will increase. So that's the logic here. Environmental sustainability, as degradation of soil is prevented and water runoffs also are prevented, that means resource optimization also takes place. Now let us get towards that, this particular technical thing. It has been found that soil loss, so soil loss is directly proportional. So it's proportional, that means directly proportional to the square root of the length of the slope, to the square root of the length of the slope. Okay, by shortening the length, of course, then if it is directly proportional to the square root of the slope, so what it means is that soil loss square is equal to length of the slope. So now you understand, if you want to reduce the soil loss, what you have to reduce? You have to reduce the slope length. Now if you want to reduce the slope of the length, what you have to do? Of course you have to construct as many as terraces as possible, and whatever the straight slope of your mountain is there, that overall length is there, that you have to reduce. Once you reduce that, automatically your soil loss also will be reduced. As if you even, so try to understand here, if you even reduce your soil loss by 1 unit, it would be reduced by 1 square or x square. If you reduce the soil loss by x, here the soil loss would be reduced by x square. So potentially twice the change is there in the soil loss when you reduce the slope length. So this is how terrace farming is very important in agriculture. Now commercial farming, let's try to understand. Now we understood sustainable farming, subsistence farming, we understood shifting cultivation, we understood terrace farming. Let us also go into commercial farming. When subsistence farming we understood, what was it all about? It was nothing but doing agricultural practices only for self-consumption, right? Doing agricultural practices only for self-consumption. But when you consider commercial farming, it is totally opposite of that. It is a common practice where various agricultural activities are done together. That means crop production, animal husbandry, and eventually either of the business directly or indirectly gives various economic benefits by selling the products which are produced in your agricultural activities. So this is particular commercial farming is for commerce, and commerce in the sense what? To sell your produce and get the profits out of it. So your main objective is assumption of profit. It is not related to sustainability, neither it is for self-consumption, neither it is for local demand, etc. It is only produce, higher output, sell and get the money. This is what commercial farming is all about. It is all about commerce. Okay. Now sometimes it is also referred to as commercial agriculture or commercial plantation, depending on the nature of the agriculture. There are various crops in Indian agriculture. Some crops are having really very high market value and some crops are having very, very less market value. If I consider cereal crops, if you consider the term MSP, minimum support price, so every year 23 to 24 crops are there in MSP. What do you mean by MSP? MSP is nothing but those list, this minimum support price is there, that price would be given to certain crops which are very, very important for a particular economy. So consider rice, wheat, all these crops are very, very important. Apart from MSP 24-23 crops, there are also plantation crops, and we all know plantation crops are having very, very high market value. Tobacco, sugarcane, cotton, right, coconut. So these are plantation crops, and these are having betel nuts. These are having very high market value. So commercial farming is also doing cultivation or agriculture of certain types of crops which will give you enough returns, not just enough but very, very high returns. Okay, so get that one thing very, very clear in your mind. It involves performing agricultural activities on large scale. So here whatever your factors of productions are there, those would be multiplied, or maybe we would try to make them intensive. If you consider land, we will use extended land. If you consider capital, 3-4-fold times of capital. If you consider fertilizers, more and more fertilizers. If you consider high yielding variety seeds, then hybrid seeds. If you consider irrigation, high technology use, mechanization used, and more water availability. So in this way, this everything is done to maximize the output and profits, and you whatever resources are there, those are used, and available land, labor, water, that is also used in utmost optimized way, in such a way that of course your output increases. Always the objective becomes to raise your output. Now commercial farming crops are also in high demand because they are exported to other countries. As the market demand is high, therefore the market value is high, and that is why such crops are always, whenever you bring them into the market, they are always into the demand, not only domestically but also in the foreign. Now characteristics of commercial farming, a very easy thing not to discuss about it. First is large scale production. Okay, second is it is capital intensive, it will burn more of your cash as input, but cumulatively its output also will be much more higher. Its output also will be much more higher. Then use of high yielding varieties, that means it's nothing but whatever HYV, high yielding varieties or hybrid seeds are there, those you would be using. It is produced for sale. Whatever production is there, it is never used for self consumption. Every produce in the commercial farming, it has an economic value. It has an economic value, whether you sell it into domestic market or you sell it into your foreign market. It has an economic value, and that is why you cannot use it for self consumption. Heavy machinery, human labor, and in most cases one type of agricultural practice is done in large areas. The practice is traditionally done all around the year. That means such agricultural practice is more of a agricultural business rather than just a primary activity. Okay, so it is not just a primary activity associated with general agriculture, but rather it is associated with the business, the commerce, that is sale of agricultural products. If you look at different types of commercial farming in India, first is dairy farming. Dairy farming is nothing but when agriculture, along with agriculture, you are also doing domestication of cattle, and you are involved in the dairy business, that is selling of milk. Then commercial grain farming. So consider that you are doing monocropping. What do you mean by monocropping? So monocropping is nothing but your one field is there, and in that field you are planting only one crop season to season. Okay, so you are just planting one crop season to season, so that this particular whatever your crops are there, these particular monocropping whatever we are talking about, these are your these fall into your commercial grain farming. So rice, wheat, then other important crops, these cereal plantation which happens, okay, and those whatever cereals are there which are having higher market value, okay, which are having higher market value, these all will fall into the commercial grain farming. Then comes plantation farming, which we already talked about. Livestock ranching, it is nothing but along with your agricultural field, you also grow certain grasses, shrubs, and based on those grasses and shrubs, particular livestock or animals are dependent. Okay, then comes Mediterranean agriculture. Here particularly we are growing orchards. So we are growing orchards, we are growing grapes, wines, as well as citrus fruits. So this particular Mediterranean agriculture is categorized by not bigger plants, but rather shrubs and herbs. Okay, so small short plants are grown. Then mixed crop and livestock farming. So mixed crop is nothing but when multiple crops are grown on the same field. Okay, so when mixed cropping is nothing but multiple crops are grown on the same field. You are doing cultivation of rice also, you are doing cultivation of sugarcane also, maize also, at the same time red gram also, chickpea also, and your cucumber also. So much of crops on the same field, that makes your agricultural activity mixed cropping. Livestock farming is nothing but, as we already have discussed it in our previous class, it is nothing but agriculture, when along with agriculture you are doing animal husbandry. So you are doing livestock, along with the livestock you are doing agriculture. Commercial gardening and fruit farming, it is nothing but a form of horticulture only. And what do you mean by horticulture? Yes, horticulture is nothing but cultivation which is done for your flowers, fruits, etc. Okay. Then comes arable farming. Now understand this very, very carefully. Many of the people don't know what the meaning of arable farming is. Always remember, there are certain crops which are grown into the field, where in such field, even before the sowing of the seeds and even after the sowing or after the germination of the seed, always such whatever soil is there on such field, that should be always aerated. Aerated means what? That means here preparation of the soil matters most. Preparation of soil, it always matters a lot. So when you consider preparation of the soil matters a lot, it means that in such soils, hoeing, harrowing, plowing, tillage, such activities will take place maximum. That is, of course, breaking down the bigger boulders of your soil into finer soil substrate, then intermixing of the layers from between like one or more layers between each other. So all these things, when you consider overall, these we will be considering into arable farming. Now when I consider arable farming, always remember, it is a farming where cultivation of arable crops is done without the help of animals. So now understand very carefully. Whatever crops are there which do require, there is a prerequisite of aeration. Aeration in the sense, of course, breaking down the soil particle, or maybe doing preparation of the soil activity in your field before the sowing, or maybe even after the sowing. It doesn't really matter. So when you are doing such agricultural activities in which we are trying to improve the soil quality, we are trying to improve the porosity of the soil, whatever crops which require such soil preparation, these are called as arable crops. Arable crops are characterized by, they need good aeration in your soil. They need good aeration in the soil, in the sense whatever roots are growing into the soil, okay, whatever roots are growing into the soil, they should properly breathe, okay, they should breathe properly. Second thing is that whatever such soil is there, whatever plants which are growing in such soil, of course they required good nutrients also, as well as good water quantity and quality also, because again, if the soil is well aerated, it would have capacity to hold the water, and as it will have capacity to hold the water, definitely then plants can easily take up that water. So such whatever crops are there, mainly cereal or grain crops, vegetables, cereals, legumes, pulses, these are your arable crops. Farmers can execute this farming on both large and small scale. Generally, arable farming, if someone is saying, it is always desired whatever crops are there, these are mainly cereals, okay, these are mainly pulses or legumes, and some of the vegetables, okay. So general Indian agricultural activities, when we are looking at, adds majorly variety of different soils are present from north to south, east to west, which requires aeration. Generally most of the soils require aeration during their agricultural cultivation, and that is why these all important crops would be called as arable crops. Then we move towards requirements. As I told you, fertile soil, balanced moisture, water availability when we talked about, hot climate, as Indian climate also is equatorial, tropical, right? So therefore, see, suitable machinery and manpower also is needed. Why? Simple. If you need every time aeration of the soil particles, preparation of the soil bed always, then of course you will be needing some machinery, some manpower. So arable farming in India mainly commercializes crops, as agriculture is the backbone of the Indian economy. India stands tall when it comes to arable farming and its culture. I already told you, most of the Indian agriculture is arable. In addition, arable agriculture is solely responsible for feeding the largest livestock and second largest human population in the world. So India, when we consider, as we always believe in the preparation of the soil, okay, every time creating the soil or doing different activities which are associated with the preparation of the soil, harrowing, hoeing, etc. So therefore, India majorly whatever agricultural activity takes place, that falls into this arable category. Advantages of arable farming: first is increased productivity, increased product diversity and more cultivated land. So here in Indian agriculture, you always, if you see, apart from taking or nurturing the health of your crops, we also look at nurturing the soil. In your field. Okay. Now there are different types of arable crops. When we talk about different types of arable crops, first is grain crops, pulse crops, oilseed crops, forage crops and fiber crops and tuber crops. Let's first get into these particular sections and understand what do they mean. Grain crops are nothing but whatever the seeds would be coming on these particular crops. For example, all the cereals like wheat, maize, rice, barley, millet. These seeds or the grains which we are talking about, they are fertilized for their edible starch grains. That means whatever these crops are there, these are fertilized to produce grains. And if you see the nutritional analysis of this particular grain, in grain crops, major grains would be having starch or carbohydrates. Starch or carbs, that is carbohydrates. And whatever these grains are there which have maximum starch and carbohydrates, these are always called as cereals. Okay, these are called as cereals. So major grain crops, when you are talking about, these are cereals. Then comes pulse crop. Now when you talk about pulse crop, again here also whatever the crop is there, it would be also having edible seeds similar to like grain crops. But the difference is that these whatever seeds are there, these are edible, such as lentil, beans, peas, but here their nutritional component is not starch but rather high protein. Okay, high protein and green fiber. Okay, so high protein and green fiber, that makes and that gives you your pulse crop. Then oilseed crops, again seeds, but these seeds are not consumed but rather these seeds are there, these are used for emulsification through which you produce oil, such as rapeseed, soybean, sunflower, which are grown for the extraction of oil. Forage crops, all the crops which are grown for their leafy, lushy crop growth, which is used for fodder production for the livestock. Fiber crops, which are grown for their fiber, for their stream of thread. Cotton, jute, mesta is also one of the fiber crops. So these are all the things. Tuber crops, whatever crops are there, it is not necessary that only fruit and seeds would be edible. So for certain crops, the roots are edible, stem is edible, which they grow underground. Potato, elephant yam, radish, beetroot, these are your tuber crops. Now let's talk about mixed farming. Now there is two important aspects you have to understand, otherwise you will get confused. First is mixed cropping. Now for all you guys, I told you already what mixed cropping means. What does it mean? What does mixed cropping means? So mixed cropping is nothing but when multiple crops you are growing in the field. Then what do mixed farming means? So if mixed cropping do we understand, what do you mean by mixed farming? So mixed farming is an occupational thing. That is why mixed farming is nothing but when you are doing agricultural activity, and along this agricultural activity you are also doing livestock. Along these livestock also you are doing what? Yes guys, you are also doing any other allied activity. So allied activity in the sense maybe pisciculture, maybe apiculture, maybe your silviculture, etc. So when multiple occupational activities or allied activities come along with your agriculture, which in combination you are doing, so that is called as mixed farming. It's a combination of crop production with sufficient amount of livestock raising. So along with agriculture, livestock, animal husbandry or any other allied activities, it is not just restricted only with livestock. Okay, it refers to diversification of agriculture in which farm invariably devotes to livestock production as complementary enterprise. So whenever a farmer is there, when he is doing, if we ask him that what is your primary occupational activity, he'll say agriculture. But along with that, he is also carrying out some complementary activities, and those are your, of course, those are your livestock and other allied activities. So most important reason for mixed farming has been necessarily in the, that is, it has been necessary in most of the regions to permit the use of system of crop rotation combined with the livestock enterprises. Now always remember, whenever just agriculture you are doing, there are two things to understand. First thing is that you are just having one occupation. If you are having just one occupation, your risk becomes very, very high. What if crop failure happens? If crop failure happens, of course you are doomed to fail, right? You are doomed to fail. So therefore, any climatic situation, any disaster can actually overturn your table. Now second thing, okay, now second thing when I'm talking about, always remember this, when agriculture we are talking about, you have to take care of one thing which is very, very important. Agriculture, whenever is done with the other allied activities, whenever agriculture is done with the other allied activities, these allied activities or these other activities always support the agriculture. So for example, if I am doing cattle farming, if I am doing dairy, if I am doing poultry, along with my agriculture, many of the whatever waste material from poultry, animal husbandry, dairy can be used in my agriculture, and many of the waste material from my agriculture could be used in my poultry, could be used in for my animal husbandry. Imagine I am a farmer, I am having 2 cows, okay. At the same time, I am having a field of rice of 5 hectares, and in which I have also planted some of the legume and pulses also, okay, little bit on the borders. Now what happens is that after picking the legume grains, whatever the remaining stock of the legume pulses is there, I can take that and use as a fodder for my cows. My cows will also have that lushy green fiber for them. Now whatever the cow dung which is coming from the cows, I can take that and make manure from it, just by adding jaggery syrup, just by adding the cow urine, just by adding some of the neem water extract. I can make a good manure, decompose it for some time, and it can become an enriched organic fertilizer, and therefore I can use that as an organic feed to my farm. So therefore this results into a economy, a small scale economies of scale, where byproducts of one industry could be used as inputs of the other industry. I hope where we are getting. So therefore, whenever such mixed farming is done, it is done so that to reduce the risk of the agricultural practice or occupation, and at the same time, second thing is that to always increase your combination of multiple agriculture and allied activities coming together and making a complete comprehensive enterprise, okay. Also crop rotation is also there. Crop rotation is nothing but different choices and sequence of the crops which you are growing throughout the seasons in one agricultural year. So this makes your overall agricultural system little bit more aligned and more combined with multiple activities which are in synergy. Getting drought animals for cultivation, for maintaining and improving soil fertility. So these are the things which could be done. As I told you, the effect of crop rotation also increases the dependability of external resources in the mixed agriculture. So crop rotation is nothing but, suppose if you consider, just let me, so crop rotation is nothing but, consider, so suppose this is your Kharif season, this is your Rabi season, and this is your Zaid season. Suppose in Kharif season you are planting rice, in Zaid season, in Rabi season if you are planting wheat, and in Zaid season if you are planting red gram. So such crop rotation is nothing but when you are choosing the crops as well as their sequence from one season to other in a one agricultural cycle. Now whenever you are shifting your crop choice and your sequence one by one, you have made a pattern of your particular crop. Now we all know during the Kharif season, okay, here in Kharif season what you can do is that, of course, you can use cattle for your puddling activities, which of course are required for rice cultivation, waterlogged condition. Then in wheat, when you are looking at the same cattle, whatever here cattle is there, the cow dung can be used for making the soil nitrogen enriched. Then red gram is there. Here atmospheric nitrogen could be fixed because of the leguminous in nature, as they are leguminous in nature. And at the same time, whatever this as red gram is done during the Zaid season, Here from cattle you can sell the dairy, milk. So see here how comprehensive your overall agricultural activity has become. So in rice, of course, rice will give you enough returns. Wheat will also give you enough returns, but red gram won't give you enough returns. But at the same time, milk returns and your red gram returns will make your overall income little bit stable in your dry region, that is summer season. Okay, so in this way our mixed farming is done. At least 10% of gross income must be, at least 10% of gross income must be contributed by livestock, and the upper limit being 49% under Indian condition. Now always remember, out of your overall 100%, whatever occupational your earning is there, 10 to 49% should come from your any allied activity, and then only it would be called as mixed farming. Okay, so whatever earning you are having in agriculture, maybe 10 to 49 should come from mixed farming. Okay, now how is it different from the diversified farming? So always remember, diversified farming is nothing but a agriculture activity or farming activity in which you are doing multiple occupational activities, and either of your one occupation gives you returns which is more than 50%. For example, suppose I am doing rice cultivation, sugarcane cultivation and dairy business. From rice cultivation I am earning 30%. From dairy business I am earning 10%, and suppose 60% I am earning from sugarcane. So in this situation, try to understand, 60% sugarcane income as it is coming, sugarcane cultivation becomes very, very important for my survival. 60%, above 50% it is contributing to my total income. That is why my farming would be called as specialized sugarcane farming. My total agricultural system would be called as, or farming would be called as, specialized sugarcane farming. Why specialized? Because my agricultural activity I am doing for rice also, for dairy also, but sugarcane gives me income more than 50%, and that is why my agricultural activity is sugarcane specialized. The same case if we consider, suppose dairy gives 35%. Okay, now consider that your rice cultivation gives 30% and sugarcane gives 35%. Now none of my activities, occupational activities, goes beyond 50%. So 35% sugarcane, 35 dairy and 30 rice. Neither of these activities are actually giving me more than 50%. So that is why here I can say that all the activities are equally important, and that is why my agricultural activity is diversified farming. Okay, now what is mixed farming then? Same case we will understand. Okay, so suppose my rice cultivation is there, my wheat cultivation, my sugarcane cultivation is there, and my dairy is there. Suppose rice is giving me 20% of income. Okay, rice is giving me 20%. Sugarcane is giving me 40% of the income. Is it okay? How much is the total? 60, and remaining 40 is coming from the dairy. Okay, so now here we can call, see, rice how much it was? 20. Sugarcane how much? 40. And whatever our dairy was there, it was 40. None of the agricultural activities are what? Giving me more than 50%. But also your dairy is also not giving 10-20%, it is giving 40%. So therefore it falls into the bracket of 10 to 49% of contribution of any allied sector, and it can be called as mixed farming. So in this way, three important terms we understood: mixed farming, specialized farming and diversified farming. I hope you get it. Now advantages of mixed farming. Of course, if you see, maintaining soil fertility, okay, it gives balanced labor load for the overall year for the farmer. It permits the use of farm byproducts. It provides greater chance of intensive cultivation, and it often gets high returns on farm businesses. If you see types of mixed farming, first is plantation agriculture, in which what you do is that overall whatever cultivation you are doing, agricultural activity, cereal crops, along with that you plant your plantation crops. Okay, then intensive farming. So intensive farming, but as a subtype or as a type of a mixed farming. So here what you do in intensive farming, it is nothing but, this is a particular cultivation in which whatever mixed farming crops you are planting, in that you are using higher inputs. Okay, so here whatever mixed farming you are doing, So along with the agriculture, if you are using livestock, if you are using livestock, if you are using allied activities like, as I told you, pisciculture, as I told you, silviculture, as I told you, apiculture, if you are doing that, and in that if you are using higher inputs, so that overall your agribusiness increases, so that overall your yield of the plant along with the animal production output increases, that would be called as intensive mixed farming. Okay, then comes mixed and multiple agriculture. For example, when you consider horticulture, growing of fruits, vegetables, mixed farming or multi-cropping is the act of growing at least two yields in similar land or similar field. So here what you do in mixed and multiple agriculture, rather than going 2-3 cereal crops, here you grow totally different crops in the same field. So you will plant rice, you will plant tomato, you will plant maybe watermelon, you will plant cucumber, you may plant legumes on the same field. Okay, so this is called as mixed and multiple agriculture. And then comes crop rotation, which I already explained you in the previous slide. What is it? Crop rotation is nothing but here on the same plot you are doing different choices of the crop and sequence of the crop from season to season for one agricultural year. So overall this is nothing but improving your agricultural choices and overall your farming capacity and overall farming activity. Then comes our horticulture, one more branch which is associated, that is horticulture. Horticulture could be a term which could be broken down into hortus plus culture. Hortus plus culture. When I talk about hortus and culture, we have to understand one thing. Hortus means nothing but garden, and culture or cultura means cultivation. So garden cultivation means horticulture. So what do you cultivate in garden? You will not cultivate rice in garden. You will not cultivate a big coconut tree in the garden. So there are some trees which are of short size in shrub or herb nature, such as vegetables and fruits, which could be easily grown not on the fields but rather in any of the area in vicinity to your settlements. For example, in gardens, for example, in greenhouses, opposed to the field scale production. So you are not doing field scale production, you are doing minor, small area, small span, small maintenance production. This particular growing of gardens or greenhouses for the purpose of cultivation of certain crops like maybe vegetables, maybe fruits, medicinal crops, spices, etc., that is called as horticulture. In horticulture, small plots are used in contrast to the agronomy in which large scale field areas are used. Okay, in horticulture could be even divided into various specialization. So if you consider horticulture, okay, so cultivation of fruits, cultivation of vegetables, fruits, both of these are different other sub branches under horticulture. For example, olericulture, for example, pomology, these are nothing but cultivation of vegetable and fruits. Okay, horticulture in India, when you see, it always aims at increasing economic value. Now why this is? Because horticultural crops have always high demand in the market, and more importantly, horticultural crops have very less shelf life. So therefore the demand for horticultural crop is always higher and constant, as you cannot store these crops. They are having a particular lifespan or they are having a particular aging span, and that is very important. Due to these high healthy values, it is in demand. It is a way of making profit by producing crops and supplies in the local market as well. Okay, other than that, annual and perennial species are there which could be grown in horticultural crops. Fruits and vegetable could be grown. The branches, you know, pomology and olericulture. Decorative and decorative indoor plants and outdoor plants also could be grown. For example, the medicinal plants, or maybe some plants which improve your decorative value. So some grasses are there, some nursery plants are there, decorative plants are there. So these nursery plants are used for decoration. All these categories fall under the horticulture. So horticulture is climate resilient and therefore assures high income to the farmer. It is not an agricultural practice which is done on large scale, And more importantly, it's not a random agricultural activity which is done from field to field. Rather, it is a short scale activity done on a specific area, and therefore it could be called as pilot basis plant production. So it could be done on pilot basis or in a restricted area, and that is why it is one of the climate resilient activities. Due to changing socio-economic profile and increasing middle class demand as well as high capita income in this sector, the overall health, climate change and food habits of people are also changing, and that's why overall horticulture sector becomes very, very important for the country. Now let's move towards our next section, that is your dryland farming. Dryland agriculture refers to growing of crops entirely under rain-fed agricultural conditions. So always remember, what is dryland agriculture? First understand this. So we all know India. So we all know India. If you consider this Indian map, just imagine what I am trying to tell. Okay, when you consider when monsoon comes in the Indian peninsula, we have to understand one thing very, very carefully, that whatever monsoon rainfall happens in this particular different regions, not everywhere there would be uniform rainfall, right? This is a very logical thing. So whatever this monsoon winds come, they bring moisture and they bring monsoon rainfall with them. But we always have to remember that India is a region with highly variated topography. So because of the mountains, here you can see as the rainfall comes, okay, so it brings higher rainfall. There are two sides on a mountain. One is windward side and second is the leeward side. So the windward side gets enough rainfall, but the leeward side that doesn't get enough rainfall. So this leeward side forms the rain shadow region, and in India, that is why if you see the overall distribution of the rainfall, that is ununiform distribution. So one of the characteristics of Indian monsoon, ununiform distribution, and that is why here you can see that major of the Indian agriculture is dependent on monsoon, but yet major of the Indian agriculture faces scarcity of the same rainfall. So we say that we are dependent for agriculture on monsoon, and yet we say that still we don't get rainfall from the monsoon. Why it is? It is because of as major reasons falling into rain shadow region. Now whatever this rain shadow region are there, of course they will be getting very scarce rainfall. So dryland agriculture refers to growing the crops entirely under rain-fed condition. So if you see in context of India, overall if you see, more than 70% of your overall cultivation is dependent on monsoon. Okay, so when you consider this, whatever your agriculture, if the growing of the crops is entirely, I am not saying partially, if it is entirely dependent on your rainfall, then that would be called as dryland agriculture, where you don't support your agriculture in any type of irrigation. Crop failure is the most common in India because of the prolonged dry spells and because of the rain shadow parts. These areas could be arid and semi-arid regions like Gujarat, Rajasthan, Central Madhya Pradesh, Chambal region, and even certain parts of even peninsular India. Okay, so any arid region, if you consider with a growing season or period adequate moisture which is having less than 75 days. So what do you mean by adequate moisture? So if you consider a particular region on India's map, and adequate moisture is nothing but that sufficient minimum amount of moisture which is required to support the minimum survival of vegetative life on that particular soil. Okay, so this suppose such adequate soil moisture only is for minimum 75 days, then these arid regions whatever are there, they fall into your dryland agriculture. Moisture conservation practices are of course essential. Primarily if you see conserving the moisture in the long dry periods through tillage, surface protection, drought resistant varieties, reduction of your soil evaporation or transpiration, these are all practices which are done in dryland agriculture. Regions have already been given: southwestern part of UP, Bihar, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Malwa region, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Western Ghats. Now based on the amount the particular region receives, so based on the amount of rainfall a particular region receives. Dry farming could be cultivation of crops in an area where rainfall is less than 750 mm per annum. Whereas dryland farming is nothing but where cultivation of crops in area receives rainfall above 750 mm, that is 75 centimeter. And rainfed farming is the area in which particular cultivation of crops in the region happens where the area receives more than 115 centimeter or 1150 mm rainfall. Okay, so now you understand the very minute difference between dry farming, dry land farming and rain fed farming. The main components of climate when we talk about, first is rainfall, relative humidity, overall moisture content, humidity content, when relative in the sense you are comparing from one region to other. Wind velocity, because wind velocity, it actually affects the overall dryness in a region. Sunshine, that is your overall transpiration and evaporation in a particular region, and temperature, again transpiration and evaporation in a particular region. Major, if you see events in the dryland research in the country, here overall statistical information has been given. So what happened in 1920? In 1920, first Royal Commission on Agriculture mentioned the scarcity tract development, which showed the importance of the dryland farming. In 1923, dryland farming research station was established at Manjeri. Here you could see then series of research stations were established. The other important thing which importantly happened was in 1972, that is the establishment of ICAR. It is one of the highest noble institutions which looks after the dryland farming. Okay, then and overall climate also. Then establishment of dryland operational research project, establishment of KVK at Yatnagar which looked after the dryland agriculture. Then overall if you see establishment of CRIDA, that is Central Research Institute for Dryland Agriculture, very very important, 1985. Where is it located? That is also very important, Hyderabad. See, such static information seems to be very very nascent. Nascent in the sense what? Yeah, this is very very simple. Why to do this? Why to do that? But such questions only are asked for easy sections in your exams like NABARD, AFO, and that is why you should have very very important, you should have clarity on such topics. One time you cover it and you don't forget it. For example, when was NABARD established? It's 1982 and you should never forget it. Okay, Sivaraman committee, it led to establishment of NABARD. Which committee led to establishment of KVK? You should be knowing this. Mention in the comment section all these questions. I want the answers from you. Okay, now these all whatever facts are there, once if you know these, there is no point that you can forget them. And if this comes in your example, very easy, low hanging fruits for you. So take the marks and just go. Okay, so that is why this is very very important. Now let's go towards the major crops in the country right now. Okay, very important section to understand. Now again remember, major crops in India I will be covering in agronomy again separately. Okay, but now let us just try to understand briefly what are the important things of major crops. Okay, just let us try to understand. First are food crops, that means majorly cereal crops. Why cereal crops are called as food crops? Because whatever our food is there, 60% of that diet includes these cereals which provide main starch and carbs for us, right? Asian population dependent on starches, and that is why cereal crops are very important for us. Mediterranean population, what are they mostly dependent on? Can anybody tell me? They are dependent on protein. Okay, so for example, if you see a British breakfast, if you see a Mediterranean diet, so there you will find more citrus fruits, horticultural fruits along with meat. Okay, so along with meat you will find horticultural crops, maybe like tomatoes, you will find then green whatever like crops like celery, asparagus, these you would be finding in the Mediterranean. American diet, if you see, that's a fast food diet of course, but American diet if you see, cultivation, again here also that is also a carbohydrate based country if you see agricultural scale, but their carbohydrates are not based on rice and wheat. Okay, they are based more on maize, and that is why this Kellogg's cornflakes, this cornflakes generation, that had started, the wave started from western parts to eastern parts. So try to get it. Okay, cash crops, consider sugarcane. So sugarcane, cotton, tobacco, jute, oilseed, these all are your cash crops. Now why these are called as cash crops? Can anybody tell? And how cash crops are different from commercial crops? Can anybody tell? So always remember, commercial crops are those crops which are having high commercial value. That means go to the market readily, you will get some people, some wholesaler, some retailer, some buyer in the market you will definitely get who is interested to buy. You get my point? They are having a commercial value. That means they are having some market value. Then what is the difference between cash crop then? If commercial farming crops are those, then what are cash crops? So cash crops are those commercial crops which could be easily exchanged in the market for money, for hard cash. So cash crops, every cash crop is a commercial crop, but not every commercial crop is a cash crop. Try to understand this. So cash crop in the sense what? You took the sugarcane cultivation, you went to the market and easily you will find wholesaler, retailers, people dying to buy sugarcane and they will give you cash in return. So they will not be saying that maybe we'll transfer you this after that. No, hard cash they will be giving you. So the market value or demand of cash crop is much more higher than commercial crop. Both of these crops fall in the same category, same commerce region, like overall commerce zone only. That means they are having a good market value. But importantly, cash crops could be easily exchanged in the market. Now that is very important. Okay, plantation crops. These are the crops in which these are perennial in nature. Perennial in the sense, these are not, this cannot be grown in 2 to 3 months, 6 months, 8 months. It requires 2 to 3 years to grow. But whatever the production is there of such plantation crops, very high commercial value it is having. Okay. Then horticultural crops, it's nothing but pomology, olericulture, growing of fruit, flowers, vegetables. That's what this horticulture is all about. Now let us do one thing, just to get an idea what all crops are all about. Let us take one crop example, and here a lot information is given. Now of course this is how this, as this class you would be seeing on the open platform, also on our YouTube channel also. So you all have to understand that with such holistic information, how easy is it to cover all the important facts of one crop each, and therefore you will not lose your marks in AFO examination. So this is how the beauty of content is. Okay, but here we will not discuss everything about the content. Okay, because let's try to wrap it up very quickly. After the class you can definitely read it. Now if you need these notes, as I told you already, our course has already started and you can join it anytime. Okay, our mission or our aim is that maximum candidate selection we would be promising for this AFO examination of 2023. Okay, so now let us understand one thing very clearly. Sorghum, that is your jowar. This you have to understand. Next thing, whenever you are studying any crop, you have to know the scientific name of that crop. Very essential. After understanding scientific name, now this I am giving you basics to understand. Okay, so after understanding the scientific name of that particular crop, you should understand that from which area that particular crop has been originated. Now if there is no data of particular crop being originated, then you should at least know that where is that particular crop belonging to. So is it the crop heavily in Southeast Asian region? Is it in Asian region? Is it in your tundra region? Is it in your Northern America, Southern America region? This also is very important fact. Okay, then you should know what is the broader classification of that crop. Is it a horticulture? Is it a coarse grain crop? Is it a cereal crop? Is it a tuber crop? That you should be knowing about. Second, overall India's production, you should be knowing about that particular crop, and you should be also knowing India's rank of that particular crop. Then whatever that particular crop is, you should be knowing different species and varieties, as well as their names also. Now this is just an introductory chapter, and that is why we are not going in depth. In agronomy we will cover one by one, all the crops one by one. Okay, so these all you can understand. For example, here even you should be knowing the scientific name as well as the family of the crop. Now I'll give you one example. In NABARD 2023, the recent NABARD which even I gave, right? In that I found that there was a question which was asked, one particular crop was asked, that is khair, katechu. Okay, khair crop. And they asked actually and one more other crop was also there. So they asked one time the scientific name, and other time they asked literally the family name also of that particular crop. So for many students it becomes a question that everybody asks that, sir, is scientific name and family important? Yes, it is important for all the agricultural examinations because these are handy marks for you. Okay, then comes annual rainfall ranging from 400 to 1000 mm. So now after the name, scientific name, everything, there are now climatic things you should understand. So you should know climatic requirements of a particular crop. Climatic requirements would include, first is temperature, and temperature would be three. First is sowing temperature, second is your growing or maybe overall flowering maturity temperature, and third is your harvesting temperature, and fourth is your optimum temperature. All these numbers you should be knowing about that particular crop. Then comes rainfall in the climatic requirements after temperature. What is the rainfall bracket, maximum minimum rainfall in which the crop can survive. Then we have to know what is the humidity in the different region in which that particular crop is grown. Then overall, what are the different soil types in which this particular crop could be grown. What is the soil requirement, and in this soil requirement what is the pH of the soil and which quality of soil, loamy, sandy, okay, which soil is required. This soil also becomes important after a climatic requirement. So in this way, when you will cover all these points, you will say that yes, I have covered the overall crop completely. Now what you will be doing is that you will make a list of all the crops and all the important crops which are for AFO examination, and you will definitely cover all these aspects. So make the notes right now only. What did we discuss? Scientific name, family of the crop, origination, endemic, pandemic to the region. Then third is your which type of crop. Fourth is your overall India's production. Okay. Then states rank, India's rank. Then is different varieties and hybrids of this particular crop. Climatic requirements, temperature, rainfall, humidity, soil requirement, soil type required, soil pH required. In this way, here we are covering a crop completely. Similarly, then for maize, okay. So here let us take the example of the maize and try to understand. Scientific name is JAIIB maize, okay. Now here if you understand, it is a cereal crop, second rated grain, okay, in context of foodstuff and fodder. Maize is also called as queen of cereals. So if secondary name is given, okay, if any pen name is given, you have to cover it. Then maize is grown in all three seasons in the India. Any peculiar feature or characteristic is there, that also you have to remember. Then climatic requirement, as I told, rainfall 100 to 50 to 100 centimeter. Soil type, older alluvial soil is, that means it could be grown on any of the basins, okay, river basins I am talking about. Sowing temperature has been given, harvesting temperature has been given, and states of cultivation is given, okay. Apart from that, you should be knowing overall India's production, India's rank, what are the states rank. These all things you should be knowing about, which we have covered in our agronomy already, okay. Now similarly, we can cover pearl, millet or bajra, and in same pattern we have covered. Look at it, features of that crop, climatic requirements of that crop. Apart from that, for a particular crop, if any seed rate is there. What do you mean by seed rate? Seed rate is nothing but if you are having 1 hectare of land, in this 1 unit of land, how much kgs or how much quantity of seeds are required for the growth of that particular crop, okay. So in this way we can cover series of crops. So rice, wheat, oats, barley, pigeon pea, Bengal, moong, green gram, kidney bean, urad, masoor, black eyed peas, cash crops, fiber crops. I have covered all the crops. So in this way we end the session here, and in next session, okay, we will come with the next session which will be about major crops in India, and we will try to cover all these major crops one by one we will be covering. And here we end the class, that is second part of our general agriculture in India. I hope that you got enough information in this overall particular chapter, and we will come with more subsections also to understand. Apart from that, in this general agriculture there are various institutions to remember, okay, various organizations which are associated with the agriculture, and that's why you should have a various list also of the agricultural institutions and organizations. So that's it, we will end the session here. Thank you very much, see you next time.